What's good, y'all? I'm your host, Adam, and this is the Tier List, a video game podcast. We're back for season 2. They couldn't stop me. They tried to cancel me and hold me down, but I wouldn't let it happen. This is a seasonal video game podcast where a guest brings a game for the titular tier list. We talk about it, rank it, but you, the audience, gets a say in where it will be placed by the end of the season. If you haven't yet, go back and check out all the episodes from season 1, as well as the season 1 recap, where we have done a titular tier list already. But this is season 2. Episode number 1, and today I have an amazing guest. He might be from somewhere in Europe. He might be a detective or a police officer of some sort. It's Brian.
Brian Lestrade, that's me.
Here he is. Brian, hey, nice to have you on 2 times in a row. It's been very good. Tell everybody about yourself real quick, give your plugs or whatever, and then tell us what game you brought for the tier list.
I can be found once in a blue moon over at Respawn Aim Fires podcast, where Adam is also a host. But primarily you'll find me at Time to Die Podcast Network, timetodierpg.com. We do actual plays with D&D type content, Dungeons and Dragons and other games, and we edit it in a voice acted and also complete with sound effects and music type of a way. So it's technically an RPG, but it sounds like an audio drama in its production.
All right, very cool. And the game you brought for us was?
The game is Sherlock Holmes. I don't remember which one. I forget.
The Awakened.
The Awakened.
The Awakened is the particular multiple. There's so many of them, but yes, we chose Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is the game we're going to talk about. We'll talk about it here in a moment. You can go to patreon.com/the tier list. You can get on there for free and vote. Support if you have a couple extra bucks, just like Brian did here, our Patreon producer, Manly Brian over on the Patreon, whoever that might be. Make sure to sub and review on your podcast service of choice. Follow us on socials at Adam Gumby or Tier List Gaming. Go to youtube.com/Adam Gumby as well for the video version. Make sure to subscribe over there. All these links, as well as the guest info, are in the description of the episode, along with a link to a straw poll to place your vote for where this game places on the tier list itself. So, Brian, this is an interesting one. This is a game that most people probably haven't heard of. So, tell us why you picked the game, history, whatever, the reason that you decided to bring this one particularly for the show, and then a short opening statement on where you think it might end up. You don't have to put you don't have to marry it at the moment, but where you're thinking about placing on the tier list, and then again, why in your history with the game.
I brought this game because you told me to. No. I was listening to Respawn Aim Fire, and you guys, I think it was when you were talking about games you played this week or something, and you had mentioned that you found these, it's like a quadruple set of double A produced games.
Yeah, these are not AAA budgets at all. No, yeah.
And you started talking about these Sherlock games. Now these date back to 2009, which I think you're going to talk about later. But the ones that were available on Steam, there's 4 of them that date back to, I want to say 2016 or so. And you were talking about, I don't know which one you started with, but you were like, you kind of walk around in this environment doing a story type of a game. You collect clues, and then the game has the player piece together some of these clues and try to advance, the solution to this mystery. And the more you talked about it, the more I thought, that's kind of interesting. And I think you saw me in the chat and you were like, we should play this together. You'd be like, Brian, play this game with me. And then I started thinking like, well, if we're both playing this game anyway, and I need to come up with something to bring to the table for the tier list, and I didn't want to do the best game that I've ever played. I just wanted to do something maybe that nobody's heard about or that is less than top tier. I thought this is our opportunity right here. So I got all 4 of them. And let me tell you, I started with the first one from 2016 or something that was available on Steam, and it was Crimes and Punishments. And within half an hour of starting this game, I was fucking hooked. That was
You get it.
the one of the opening scenes to the beginning of the mystery. You walk in as Sherlock into this garden area, and you go into this like woodshed kind of a cabin that's for like storage for tools and stuff. And you look over on the wall, and there's this dude impaled to the wall with a fisherman's harpoon, just stuck to the wall with his feet dangling in the air, just hanging there. And it's like, anyway, this is how we found the murder scene, Holmes. We just something. You're just like, what is going on? And so from that moment on, you're so curious about this mystery. But I played about half the way through that, and then when we were talking about which game to do for the show, the latest and the greatest, and probably I think you said the best reviewed one was The Awakened, and it's a spooky time one where it mixes Sherlock with Cthulhu, which is a fascinating concept. It's a wonderful like nerdy uh what do you call those? It's when you pair two nerdy
Crossover, kind of, maybe.
yeah, crossover. So that's what we chose. And as far as what I'll rate it, off the bat, I'm thinking it's a B or a C. Now, I told you when we did the finale of last season that I was going to try to rank more closely according to how you wrote these out. And a B and a C, neither one of those is technically a bad game. D can be a bad game, but B and C, B is like a great game, I think it says, especially for fans of the genre. And then C is kind of a cult followed game where it's good, and people who are really into this shit will probably really like it. So I'm hovering between those right now. I'll make a definitive decision by the time we're done here.
All right, very cool. Yeah, similar to Brian, I had played Crimes and Punishment back on like early Xbox One days, I think it was. Just randomly, I don't know if it was a random Game Pass ad or it was a thing that was cheap or whatever it was. And I played, like the first couple. That game does it a little different. I did the first couple cases in that one, and they put the eyeglass in. And then I eventually came back to it because I randomly saw it on sale, like in like the whole collection for really cheap. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm into these games. I like the idea. I got really into my detective era just as a person, like watching movies and
Same.
yeah, read or listen to audiobooks or whatever. Just got into it all of a sudden. I was like, these games would be a good addition to that obsession that I currently have. And then I was like, okay, yes. We talked to Brian. It's like for season 2 of the tier list, I have no problem with people bringing things they think are an S tier, but I also like stuff that is not an S tier because that could be really fun as well. And I was like, listen, I have not played it, but we both bought this collection. This is the highest rated and most modern one. Maybe give it a try. So, yeah, I was there my first time with this particular title. Again, there's a lot of information about the developer and the background of these games that I am very excited to get into. So where I'm decided of placing it, I'm sort of where you are, but I'm also, again, this is not definitive. I'm not putting my stake where it's going to go, but I'm looking at C and D. And D is not saying it's a bad game. The exact description for D tier is sicko games. This tier can be recommended to those who are into the weird outlier games that are mostly remembered as trivia answered, far from perfect and not necessarily good. This tier could be the game you hold close to your heart, but no, it's not for most people. And again, we'll go through the other tiers as we get there. But again, this could be a C or a D tier that I fucking love. I love it like it's an S tier game. I enjoy these games so much, even though they're weird and AA budget as hell. But man, I fucking love this shit so much. So we'll see. I have not decided yet. We will see where it goes.
I believe I recall D did say it could be bad games, but C and B never mentioned bad games at all.
Yeah, C so necessarily says swimming in sevens, which again, sevens are great.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that if anybody's never played this, I don't want to dissuade you from playing this. It is a very enjoyable series.
Yes, if you love murder mystery specifically. But again, I love that shit. But again, we'll get there. We'll talk about it. A quick, short overview of the game before we get into the main topic and talk about the game. Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is an adventure game developed and published by Frogwares. It is a remake of the 2007 game Sherlock Holmes The Awakened. Did not know that going into this game, that this is a remake of an old Sherlock Holmes game that they already made. And
Wow.
the 10th installment in the Sherlock Holmes series. The remake builds upon the original game with updated visuals, new voice cast, and improved gameplay. The plot was also reworked to serve as a sequel to the 2021 video game Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1.
Okay.
So, that is the basic overview of what the game is.
But I will point out that these games, and it specifically says on their game description or website or wherever I saw it, these games can be played individually. You don't need to start at the beginning and work your way through the series.
Do you know who Sherlock Holmes and Watson are? You're good to go. That's really all that you need. Yeah, it does not matter. There's like a couple lines here or there. It's like, oh, I remember that from, but it does not matter. You'll be fine. We're gonna move on to the main section where this is the meat of the show where we talk about it, good and bad, things we like, story, art, whatever it is. But I know specifically, we both had a couple of sicko things to talk about before we get started. So, Brian, what is the thing that you wanted to talk about as we get into the main section of the game?
So you in unintentionally got me on a Sherlock kick here doing this. I started with Crimes and Punishments, and then I was like, this murder mystery stuff is something that I've always liked, but I haven't, delved into it for a while, like a few years. And I'm like really into it. So I ended up my mom was like, it's poetry day. Everybody in the family write poetry. And so I sat down and spent like several hours writing this crazy poem about a murder mystery. And I ended up producing that into a little recital type deal with music and ambience that I put on Time to Die's podcast. I ended up listening to I already had the audiobooks of Sherlock Holmes' complete works. And so I ended up listening to one or two of those stories while skating around and working around the house and things. We had to write Spanish stories in Spanish class, and I got carried away and wrote an 11-page mystery about this murder, all in Spanish. I didn't even submit it to the class because it was too insanely long. But I was hooked, man. I was like, this is my murder time. I love this. So I wanted to talk about the wild ride that was one of the Sherlock books that I read. I listened to it on audiobook. I won't give away all the deep spoilers because I think Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote this. He dropped this book like 6 months ago, and maybe not everybody's had a chance
It's pretty
to get
new.
into it. Yeah. But I do want to spoil it a little bit by going through some of the events of this story briefly, because it was bonkers is the reason why. It was just bonkers. It starts off as you expect any Sherlock to start off. Uh, he's solving murders from his home without even leaving the house. People come to him and tell him the facts, and he's like, "Oh, this is what happened." And so Watson comes in and is like, "You've been doing this? How do you even do that?" A real murder happens, and they go to the scene and investigate. They pick up the clues as per usual. Events go on, and Sherlock kind of has a feel for what's happening, but one of the other detectives, the competitive detectives, comes to his house, and he's like, "I've solved the case, Holmes." And he's like, "Do tell." So this guy goes through all the facts and the reasons why this murder happened and who caused it and blah, blah, blah. And when he gets to the end, you know that Sherlock is like, you are way off the mark. Like, that's some bullshit. And then Lestrade comes in, and the Timu detective is all excited to tell him about what happened. And so the dude comes up the stairs, and he's like forlorn looking. He looks really down, and they're like, "Wait, what's wrong?" And he goes, "There's been a second murder." And it completely wipes out everything the Timu detective just went through. So Sherlock is like, "Well, I think I know what's going on." He sees a piece of evidence. He's like, "Where did you get that? What is that?" And the detective Lestrade is like, oh, it was the second murderer. We did this and this. And Sherlock is like, okay, I think I know what's going on here. So he's like, hold on, give me just a moment. I think the murderer is about to show up here in a bit. And they're like, what? He's like, I have to arrest him personally because you guys will bungle it. He goes downstairs and comes back up with the murderer. You're just like,
He was
what
just
the fuck?
downstairs. That's
Yeah.
wild.
The murderer tries to escape out the window, but they hold him down. There's a little bit of a wrestling match. And then they get him all cuffed and everything. And finally Sherlock is like, all right, now you guys can ask me whatever you want. I'll tell you everything on how I solved this shit. The next chapter, that's where the chapter ends. This book was, this story is a story in Scarlet, I think, or what's the Scarlet one? I forget the title.
The Crimson Fucker.
No. So the next chapter begins, and you're like, I'm ready to hear what the fuck Sherlock did to figure this out and capture this dude right in this moment. Suddenly, we're listening to the adventures of this dude dying in a desert in Utah, in Salt Lake, down in Utah with this little girl, and a bunch of their troop has already died from dehydration. And you're like, wait, what? What's the solution to this mystery? And then these Mormons come along with OG Brigham Young leading the troop. And you're like, what is happening? And they're like, we'll rescue you from the desert if you'll join with us. And so I was like, is that the end of the book? He doesn't reveal? I was like, if that's what Conan Doyle wants to do, that's his choice, I guess. I guess we don't have to know. We just know Sherlock's a genius. I go into the bibliography, I find this book, I look at the Spark Notes, and it's like, no, it really jumps into Utah all of a sudden.
That is crazy.
So to summarize the end, it takes you through the whole history of this dude that was wronged in Utah. There's tragedy that strikes. He ends up chasing as a revenge tale. He chases two of the people that the antagonists all over the world, and they end up in England. And then he murders these two dudes, which are the ones that they've been trying to solve this crime for. And finally, when we get all caught up, the very tail end of the book, everything's done and everybody's gone, and the prosecution has started and stuff. And you finally hear Watson talk to Sherlock about, how did you arrive at all this stuff? And then you finally get to the big reveal, and it's like, what a long, crazy ride, man.
That's so crazy, man. I love those books, which is, I will get into it when we talk about this game. They might subvert your expectation in how a normal Sherlock thing plays out, because it doesn't necessarily play out the way you always assume that these would.
I read somewhere that they took a lot of inspiration from the real stories of the books, but then they ran with it.
Did their own thing. Very cool. So right before, again, we are going to talk about the video game. I am just here to talk about Sherlock Holmes. I do not care. I have one interesting thing before we talk about the actual game itself. Frogwares, which is the developer of the Sherlock Holmes video games, right? Frogwares is a privately owned Ukrainian video game developer. Again, they are mostly known for doing these adventure games. Like starting in 2002, they have been making Sherlock Holmes mystery video games. So we're talking about like old PC games, Wii game, like they've done everything across the board, right? Like this game that we're talking about today is a remake of a 2006 game, also called Sherlock Holmes The Awakened, but this is just like a new updated version of it, right? The interesting thing with this studio is that they had been working with Focus Entertainment, which is a publisher who puts out like a lot of AA kind of level stuff, right? They were going to work on a game called Call of Cthulhu, which as a TTRPG guy, Call of Cthulhu is a tabletop game. They were adapting it to a video game, right?
Yep.
So Focus Home Interactive announced that this team, the people who had made the Sherlock Holmes game, was going to make a Call of Cthulhu game. Something really, really weird happened. There's like lawsuits and all kinds of back and forth and stuff. Ends up being Frogwares is dropped from the project. Call of Cthulhu, by the way, still comes out, just made by a different team at this point. Frogwares is dropped from the project, and they released The Sinking City, which is a third-person detective game that takes place in the H.P. Lovecraft. So they basically made the same game but on their own, right? Except for that the new publisher they worked with, they have literally went to court. Man, it was like over a course of like 8 years, with with about a 4 year period. They were in litigation with their old publisher, who's Nacon, over The Sinking City. Like, The Sinking City got pulled from stores because like they owned the rights to it, but then the publisher reposted it on Steam and had like hacked an altered version of it on Steam, and then they had to DMCA. It's wild. So basically, there's a small independent studio who had been making a bunch of
YouTube reaction faces.
your YouTube stuff, who had been making these Sherlock Holmes games, try to get into the world of Lovecraft, and it becomes an absolute nightmare for like 4 years of the studio. Like, legitimately, like fighting multiple publishers, getting and losing the rights to their own games, all kinds of stuff like that. Again, now they're fully independent. They own the rights to The Sinking City and all that good stuff. And then also,
Dude, Adam,
yeah, what's up?
Can you imagine how devastating that would be to lose rights to your own game?
Yeah, and then have to fight for it back. I think it was even some of the Sherlock Holmes stuff. And all of this happens in the middle of Russia invading Ukraine. It also happens during when all of this stuff happens as well. It's crazy. So basically, they have a crazy history. But at the end of the day, there are 10 Sherlock Holmes video games. Some of them are remakes of their own video games. This one is technically number 10, but it's technically second in the new iteration of Sherlock Holmes. That's all we really need to know. It is crazy. But how they've made it Sherlock Holmes and then Cthulhu video games. All right, the actual game now, right? This one is interesting. Just the history of the Sherlock Holmes video games. Because normally, again, in some of the other ones, I think in like Devil's Daughter and Crimes and Punishment, it is Sherlock Holmes hanging out at his house. People come to him, and during the course of the game, you solve multiple cases, right? So it'll be like the case of the garden stabbing or whatever, and you'll do all of those, and there's normally an overarching sort of a story going on, but it's Sherlock doing cases and just, doing his, like you go to a location, he solves the case, then you do it a couple more times, right? This game
and after
oh, yeah,
after each individual one, you lock in your final answer, and they're like, "Are you sure this is what you think happened?"
You can be wrong in those games. You can straight up, or you can get it correct, and then you make the moral choice of like, does he let him go? Does he lock him up? What does Holmes want to do here? But you 100% can mess those games up, which is a crazy thing. This game, completely different from that. This is it starts off as one case and turns into a linear story of like this thing. It's a globetrotting adventure. It's like it starts here, it goes here, and he just follows the line of where the case takes him. And it's also set up in a bunch of little open world areas. Like every time that you hit a new chapter, you're in a new location, and it's normally an open little area, and you run around and you find clues and you figure out what's going on. So this game plays completely different from all the other ones in the fact that it's not a bunch of cases, and it's an open zone kind of a game, and it's a linear thing. And all the while, the Cthulhu
bigger
shit...
maps.
Do what now? Bigger maps, yes.
Bigger maps.
Yeah, you're actually running around and actually doing stuff, following leads. You can miss stuff. I don't think you can necessarily you probably can mess up if you don't know enough, but it's not as much as like, because in those other games you could have all the clues and just choose the wrong thing because they both make sense, and then you're just wrong, and it is like, oh well, sorry Holmes, move on with your life. This game is more
sorry Holmes.
It is what it is. This
one modern saying and
yeah, sorry buddy. But no, this one is more of we're following a story. We're in open world environments, and Holmes is trying to get down to the bottom of this. I mean, it's Cthulhu before bad things happen to everybody. What are your thoughts on this direction, the story, where things go? I mean, if people are watching the video version, there's like moments in the game where like Holmes is like in like he has like quote unquote hallucinations where you're like doing like it's like fall off the cliff and like you don't die, and then there are tentacle monsters and you're supposed to walk into its mouth, and it's like, this is not real London. Holmes is hallucinating, but like, is he? Oh, that's the whole question. So what is your idea on this take of, instead of we're just doing a bunch of cases, we're following this story with Holmes as he's losing his mind?
I don't think I can really talk about this game very easily without comparing it to Crimes and Punishments and the differences between them. I'm torn because the dork inside of me loves this mixture of, what do we say, a crossover of Sherlock and Cthulhu. However, I also love how grounded the stories of Sherlock Holmes are when it's just people and murders and clues, and once you get into the Call of Cthulhu type shit, there's some mysticism and magic that doesn't necessarily always seem to follow the rules of how the world works. And so it's like a fantasy genre having a magic system where they don't really, it's all wishy-washy. It's like, well, the wizard can do this, just, and they hand wave it away, you know, versus a lot of Brandon Sanderson's stories where he's like, here's how the magic works. Now that you know the rules, you know where their limitations are. So I was kind of mixed. But in the Crimes and Punishment game, there's some similarities. You would collect your clues, and then you have this mind palace, which is a menu. Well, I'll start with the menus because this is really nice. I missed this now that I've started playing other games. Sherlock Holmes allows you to hear a big long conversation between characters, and if you're like me and you zone out once in a while because you're a daydreamer, it logs everything you need to know. Like the whole transcription is in there for you to backtrack through and say, "Oh yeah, okay, here's what I'm doing," and get caught up. And when it gives you your menu full of clues, individual items you've collected along the way, you can read about their history and lore and what happened, like all the things you've discovered about them all the way. As you start to talk to people and gain more information, it adds it to each item of evidence. So suddenly your pen that you found on the evidence tray has extra backstory you can refer to about where it came from, what kind of ink it had, or whatever. So then there's a Mind Palace menu, and the Mind Palace allows you to take a lot of the data that you've accumulated so far and start connecting one to another.
And there's normally a
And
question where it's like, where did this person get kidnapped to? And then you'll use the different clues that you gather as you investigate to connect multiple, like four things to be like, oh, this is where he's probably heading.
right. Um, so once you connect the right dots, it will you'll connect this clue to this clue, and suddenly you'll get, here's what we do next in the story to pursue this line of thinking. So it's a wonderful blend of hand holding so that you don't get stuck too badly, but also allowing the player to figure the shit out themselves and feel like they really are in the position of Holmes. It's not just a telltale game where they railroad you through everything. Um, that said, the only times I got stuck in Crimes and Punishment, although I haven't finished the whole game, I've gotten maybe halfway through it, were when there was clues to be had and I couldn't find them, so I ended up wandering around looking for these. A couple times I had to pull up a YouTube walkthrough. Um, with The Awakened, I got stuck a few more times, and what I learned is that you really have to pay careful attention to your UI prompts, whether
Yeah.
it be in the evidence that you have or whether it be on your screen saying, The Awakened has the option where you can pin a piece of evidence to your gameplay screen, and that allows you, when you talk to NPCs, he'll talk about that specific piece of evidence and ask them what they know about it. So you got to pay attention to when it's prompting you to do those things. And then as you go along, I learned this the hard way. You can hit, in my case, it was L1, and it would show you around the world in front of you which like objects or people can be interacted with. versus which will do nothing. And it becomes extremely important for collecting clues, because then you're not just wandering around aimlessly clicking on every single thing. And it sounds like if you feel like maybe that's too handholdy, no, you will appreciate it down the road. It saves you so
Yeah.
much time.
Funny thing about that is that there's two. So there's you hit the one button and it shows everything interactable. But Holmes also has, funny enough, a detective vision, which seems to be maybe connected to the Cthulhu thing, where he can zone in, like super hard focus on things that you would not normally like. Okay, so in this game you can play as Watson sometimes, and he does not have that ability to super focus on things, and you Holmes can super focus on things which become new clues, like the way that the scratch marks are on the ground. You can't just see that normally, but if you use that detective vision, and there's a little blue circle that shows you, like, hey, use your detective vision, you'll find even more clues that, again, Watson can't, but Holmes, when he super focuses, maybe because he's going mad, he can see these extra things. So you got to pay attention to the UI and what some of these buttons are if you want to get everything.
Uh, I think the last thing that is like a game mechanic is that in both games you could go up to key NPCs and do like a profile rundown of them visually.
I love this
So
shit so much.
it'll zoom in on them while they're just standing there, and you can kind of rotate around their body and look at all the different how their eyes are, if they have a scar on their cheek.
Oh, fingernails are
Uh,
black from ink.
yeah, he stained his clothes and he hasn't bothered to clean it up yet, or he's a slob or whatever. And a lot of them, it's like, is that useful? And in later in the story, you find out some is, some isn't. But you can take those things that you learn about the people and the what are they called? They're called it's like an assessment or
Yeah, it's like a case. I forget. Yeah, there's yeah. You
and
make a file about every person that you observe.
so then you can when you like you take these you get these conclusions about them that you come up with, and that allows you to then it triggers new questions you can ask them, new things you can talk about, that they harness these conclusions you've come to, and the people are usually like, how did you know that, you know? Oh, incidentally, I did that as a goof, but the voice acting in this game in these games is actually really good.
Yeah.
We're talking about how these are double A games, but they got some legit voice actors.
I'm trying to find the guy who does. Oh, keep talking. The guy who does. So they recast him when they started doing these. When Frogwares went kind of independent, recast the guy who plays Holmes, and he's a very notable voice actor. But give me a second to look up what his actual name is. But you'll recognize him once I bring it up.
So Troy Baker, no,
No,
no.
it is not Troy Baker.
While I'm on the topic of voice acting, one interesting thing that I noticed was in Crimes and Punishment, it is the classic depiction of Holmes that we all think of based on pictures and stories and stuff. Probably middle-aged, the way he behaves. Your first introduction to him in Crimes of Punishment is as Watson with these gunshots sounding in the apartment. You go upstairs and Holmes is just shooting shit in his apartment for target practice, and he's not even like looking. He's doing it either he wasn't blindfolded. I think he was using a mirror. Maybe he was blindfolded. And Watson is just like, "What are you doing?" So he's this quirky dude, which is kind of how he was in the books. But once you jump into The Awakened, it's like they dialed back some of his autism and made him a little bit more grounded and socially in tune with everybody else.
Because he's
And
also in the timeline. This is supposed to be like. I mean, chapter one is where the game's, even though it's a game number 9, chapter one is where Holmes starts, like before he even meets Watson. And this game is supposed to be the very, like, his first maybe year or two with Watson being the Sherlock Holmes that we know.
yeah, and so he goes from like middle-aged in Crime and Punishment to now the voice actor sounds like he's in his 20s.
Yeah. The voice
Kind
actor,
of
by the way,
interesting.
Alex Jordan, he's Mr. Hands in Cyberpunk. He's the Rook in Dragon Age Veilguard. So he's one of the new up and comer voice actor guys. But yeah, he's very good.
Okay. I think that one of the benefits it has of them making this decision is that when the Cthulhu stuff starts happening and his mind starts to get effective and affected and he's hallucinating, it feels like you have a nice sane place to start, and then he starts to get progressively less sane. Whereas if he starts out kind of batshit, you know what I mean? So I don't I didn't enjoy it as much in terms of whimsy, in terms of just the kookiness of his character, but it did seem to help the story a little bit more down the road to start out that way.
Yeah, one more gameplay thing I want to talk about because we were talking about the Mind Palace and collecting clues and detective vision and stuff. You also get these points where you get to, I forget what they call it in the game, but basically as you go you do solve cases in this game. It's not like the other game where like, oh, I solved the case of the Scarlet Fucker and then I move on to the case of the honeybee kidnapper or whatever. This one is like it's all again. He's tracking basically this plot to raise Cthulhu, and it's like okay, now I'm at this manor, and you walk into this manor in New Orleans, and there's a murder scene. So what you'll do is you'll look at the clues and figure stuff out, and then he will go into his detective vision, and you can pick the way things happen. So basically there'll be like 4 spots or 5 spots in an area and you'll see what really happened. Like there's the body, here's some stuff thrown around and you'll find those clues. And then you come up to it and you'll have these nodes. Normally it's like 3 or 4 of them and you'll snap and then he'll make an imagination idea of what could have happened. So based on the clues, so like one of them, like it'll be like, okay, 2 of them, it's like there's a figure, we don't know who it is. And then the lady who got killed, so we know who the lady is, we don't know who the killer is, and there's multiple options of how he would have attacked her in this particular room in this particular way. And based on like, oh, I gathered enough clues that I know the weapon he's using, so I need to pick the one that's the right weapon because they're all multiple versions of him attacking her, but only one of them has the right weapon. And you do like 4 or 5 of those scenes, put them together correctly, you validate his thoughts, and he's like, this is exactly what happened. So you are doing instead of just collecting the clues, you are putting together the scene in his mind and then connecting all of them. And it's like, okay, he came in through the door, he did this. This person screamed, they came to investigate. He stabbed him with this weapon. He went to the other room and then you figure out like, oh, this is the crime. You solved the crime scene in this particular area, and that like imagination crime putting together thing is really really cool.
Yeah. And it gives you bonus points if you get them all correct the first try. So there's incentive to, it's not just about like, oh, I'll try them all. I'll burn through all of these things mindlessly. It gives you incentive to actually try to really think about the evidence you have or collect more evidence and then try to figure out what really did happen in this room.
That's cool. I think gameplay wise, that's most of like your detective because not an action game. I think you shoot 4 bullets in this video game. It is not an action game, but as far as investigating, Mind Palace, all that stuff, I think that's the basics of what we're doing during the game.
Yeah. Crimes and Punishment was, like I said, more grounded. The cold hard facts, the real hard physical clues, the observations, but you might enjoy The Awakened more if you just like spooky vibes. It's not a scary game. It's not an overly gory game, but there are at least maybe 2 to 3 chapters that are legit like, okay, this is spooky time. Creepy stuff.
We have, and again, I'm not going to spoil it, but again, normally in Sherlock Holmes stuff at the end, he'll be like, okay, here's how it all happened. And again, he knows, I think he's like 80% of the way there in this one, but there is that little bit of doubt where like maybe, again, what's the whole quote? Like, once you look at all the evidence, however impossible, it has to be that what you know the saying, whatever. Basically, even if it seems impossible to happen, if you've X'd everything out as not being true, then it has to be that option. And they kind of play with that here with like, is this shit real? Is there really a God in the sea that this person is trying to raise? Or again, he does mention it like, I mean, maybe you just hit me with hallucinogenic because as you find clues, they're like, there's definitely people who have been fed drugs to hallucinate, but I mean, Holmes, he's trying to figure that out. So I will just say that he gets mostly there, but there's not always exactly oh, I know exactly what's happening. all that to say though is like the creepy stuff, because there's the lady with the doll, and I'll just leave it there. And that is probably the creepiest doll in all of media. And there's a point where you talk to the doll, and he talks to the doll, and the doll has her own voice. And my assumption is, if you saw that scene as Watson, you would just see a lady holding a doll doing a weird voice. But when you do that investigation as Holmes, the doll has its own fucked up demon voice. And I'm like, oh, he must, again, either this shit is real, or Holmes is going crazy because he's been hit with some hallucinogen, whatever the answer may be. And he's like, he's living this experience now. Because it gets, that doll's fucking fucked up, dude.
Who would I recommend this game to? I would say yes, if you love Telltale games, although it is not a Telltale game. It just has some of those casual gamer vibes to it. It does have things like QuickTime events, but they're extremely few and far between. It's mostly about collecting clues and evidence, advancing the story, and trying to piece things together. So yes, if you like that, I was able to pick this game up and put it down at my leisure because it saves as you go. It's not like Metroidvania where you have to find the next save point before you can put the game down. And so I value those kinds of games since I have to work and I have a bunch of projects to do. I like to be able to pick up a game for half an hour and put it down when I'm done. Very casual, relaxing. The mysteries are very compelling, and so that hooks you. Like I said, within the first half hour of Crimes and Punishment, I was like, I want to know more. And then I would also recommend it if you can forgive a little bit of jank. Now, The Awakened was more polished, but when we're talking AA games, that also includes, the walking and the clicking on stuff. It's not all super polished, and the graphics are good, but they're not incredible.
This game's graphics are better than some of those earlier ones, for sure.
Yeah.
But it is not, yeah, this does not look like, your big budget action adventure game. It's like, the characters look pretty good, and the rain looks nice, and the rest of it looks like a bunch of old buildings, I guess.
It kind of has the vibe of like when you buy, what are they called? Assets for a game, It's like that quality. Purchased assets quality, even though I don't think they are purchased assets. Maybe they bought them and manipulated them, modded them, but it's like relaxed, casual, low budget, very compelling stories, and so a game you can pick up and put down. That's what I would say if I was going to recommend this to somebody.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I agree with you on that. Here's the thing: it's very AA. It's a private team doing their own thing, remaking their own games, doing whatever they can to keep putting these games out and making money. But if you want this kind of game, the pickings are slim. They're not. There's not a ton of. I'm gonna actually be a detective games, right? And I think you could do much worse. I think there probably is a world where there's much better, but we do not live in that world. We live in a world where if you want to play, especially getting the Sherlock, I mean, I'm sure he's probably public domain at this point, but getting Sherlock Holmes, you understand who this man is. You understand who Watson is. You get the idea, the time period. If you're like, I like Sherlock Holmes, I like Robert Downey Jr. as Sherlock Holmes. I like listening to the audiobooks. You get to live in that world and play a solid, good version of that world. Again, if you're a sicko, you might love it. And it's quick and easy. Because again, there's 8 chapters in this game, maybe 9, and they're all like an hour apiece. So you can play a chapter a night and then move on. And again, I think what they nail is the mysteries are good. I feel like again, some of the games are just like copying the stuff that he was already written. So that makes sense. He wrote pretty good. Obviously, he's a sir. He got knighted because he wrote so good. But I think that the mysteries are interesting and good.
I think he's a sir. I'm pretty sure he's a sir.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. Again, it is a very specific, like, you have to be interested in this, because if you're just going into a game for, like, I like playing the biggest budget and beautiful and like no, like this is do you like detective stuff? Here's a very good one of those, and that's all that it does. But with that said, I love that shit.
There are two more things.
Oh, go ahead.
Uh, One more benefit is I paid $20 for all four games, but I also saw them what individually it was like $4 or something. They were just dirt cheap. And it's like each game is, I think, about 10 hours of content. So that's a nice bang for your buck.
Yeah, it's not bad. It really, again, if you have to be live in this world where it's like, hey, we can't make a 40-hour open epic, Sherlock Holmes JRP or RPG, but we can make a 10-hour really really cool mystery. Listen, I'll take it. I'll be happy. It's not the worst ever. I guess we can start moving on to our closing now. Is there any last thing you want to say? We kind of just said our closing statements there, but if there's any last thing before we move on to the point of no return, after this, you can't go back.
Hey, I see what you did there. Just like the games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm locking in. I feel good about what we presented. I think we covered all that I wanted to cover. So let's move on to the next section.
All right, very good. Let's see. All right, so it's time to move over to our official tier list rankings for Sherlock Holmes. It is me on the left and you on the right. So again, Brian, if you want to scroll up to the top of the thing, we're gonna vote both decide what our vote's gonna be, and we can read the description again. All these descriptions are on Patreon.com/the tier list of what each tier means. But A or S is masterclass, A is excellent, B is great, C is good, D is sicko. And there's a little more to that. But where are you thinking now that we've talked about this? Where do you want to put this at?
I'm still wavering between B and C. So B says, great games. This tier could be recommended for fans of the genre. What is this genre, do you think? Is this like a genre of Telltale games or is it different?
I don't know. I think this has to be just like a mystery. Let me see what the actual
Like third person adventure mystery or
they're
something?
considered. Yeah, they're considered adventure games. So yeah, I guess like adventure mystery game.
Because you're not capping people,
There's
there's
no
no
action in
violence.
this. There's very little
Yeah.
action, so it's definitely an adventure. I mean, this would be if this was in the late '90s. This would be a point and click game, but it's not. So this is
Oh,
adventure. It's an adventure game, I suppose. Yeah.
okay. So fans of we're talking these adventure games or click and point and click and stuff, or hardcore players. This could represent general well-received games, popular in their time, or represented by a sizable fan base. I don't think this has a huge fan base. It's not sizable necessarily, but I think the fan base consistently praises these games if they've played them. C has good games, not great games, good games. This tier can be recommended to those who enjoy something unique or a cult classic, which I definitely think these could be because they are niche. Swimming in sevens, it says. Everybody's given it a 7, and I think that is a good fit. I could see some people giving it 8s, but on average, I would say it's probably a 7 game. Or a game enjoyed by diehard fans of the fan base, Sherlock Holmes fans, who want the game to get its flowers. That's a tough one, man. I'm wavering between those two. Sicko games you mentioned, tier number D. This tier can be recommended to those who are into the weird, outlier games that are mostly remembered as trivia answers, far from perfect and not necessarily good. I guess it doesn't say bad, but it says not necessarily good. This tier could just be a game to hold close to your heart, but no, it's not for most people. Now, I'm going to try and sway you away from this, all right?
Are you now?
Uh, I would not say that this is an outlier game that's mostly remembered as a trivia answer. I would argue that these games are going to stick with me because and probably, I'm guessing you, because their stories are compelling and the mysteries, like I said, I'm not going to forget a guy that's pinned to a wall with a sailor's harpoon. That's in my brain. I can't unsee that. Um, I There's 4 of these games. So given that I'm playing them in a series, that's also going to stick with me that oh yeah, the Sherlock Holmes games, you know. Are they far from perfect? Yes, but not that far considering what they're trying to do, right? they're janky, but I feel like they definitely accomplished their missions. Not necessarily good. I would say these definitely are good if you're fans of this stuff. So that's my argument to steer you away from D. I just got to decide if I'm going B or C. What are you thinking?
I mean, you've had made good arguments, and that's the thing. I said from jump, even if I gave this game a D and it would be the lowest on our personal tier list, I still fucking love it like it's an S tier. So like that would not be disrespecting it. But just looking at these and going back and forth, I think I'm more settling on C. Right? Where like I think these are very specific games. I think yeah, swimming in sevens. I do feel like it is a hardcore game for those who like Sherlock Holmes mystery adventure games. And this I do feel of the of the series, as far as I've played, I've only played like 3 of the 10 or whatever. I think this one is like feels like the most approachable. Like it's the most polished, it's the most modern. Um it has a lot of stuff going for it. Because even some of those other ones, like I was playing Devil's Daughter first, I'm like, this feels like a 360 game. Oh, it was. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just pointing it out. But for me, it's like, yeah, it's definitely good. I could make the case for D, but again, a D that I love like an S. But I think as far as this episode goes, I'm going to settle on C. Good games. I would probably give it a 7. I think it deserves its flowers. Everything that's in the C tier, I think, works. So Adam is going to drop that tier list vote into C right now.
I'm feeling that. It is a unique game. I can't think of another game that's quite like it with all the clues and the piecing things together. Um, I could definitely see it being a cult classic. I could definitely see a lot of people giving sevens. That said, I would declare it to be a high C. I'm not talking about the drink, but I feel like swimming in sevens and up. You know what I mean? I don't think that there would be a ton of 6s or 5s for this game. And I think it's accessible enough that while we are technically calling it a cult classic in this C tier, I think a lot of people, even if they don't really love AA games or they don't really love um, this particular genre of adventures, I think they could find things in it that are compelling and interesting. So maybe when we get to the end of season 2, maybe this can be like a high C, one of the highers of the C's. You know what I'm saying?
One of the most loved C. So you are going to put it in
Yeah.
C though. All right. I'll make a note of that. It's a higher C though. Because I kind of agree with you. Like I like this game more than a C. Objectively, I think it should be a C tier game. I like it more than that, which is fair enough. So, all right, as it stands now, both me and Brian have placed this game into the C tier. Once again, C tier is good games. Tier could be.
I'm gonna go to Patreon and vote a beat, and then it'll balance me out.
You're allowed to. Can be recommended to those who enjoy something unique or cult classic, swimming in sevens, or a game enjoyed by a diehard fan base who wants the game to get its flowers. I think that explains it well. That is our vote. But hey, you audience, you can. For the few people who have played this video game, you can also make your voice heard, or just you vote because you feel like doing it. You can look down in the description below for a link to a straw poll where you can go just give yourself a free vote and where you think this deserves to be on the tier list. Or go to patreon.com/the tier list, and there will be another poll for free for voting, as well as a description of what each of the tiers are in case you need a reminder.
Adam,
yes.
you've played 3 so far, right? Even if you haven't finished them?
Yes, I played 3 total. Mm-hmm.
And you finished The Awakened.
Yes, Awaken's the one that I finished, yep.
I played the 2, I played about 1.5 of these. They're only like $4. If any of you have listened to this and thought, I'm kind of curious, Adam, which one would you personally recommend that they start with?
This is just a personal thing because some people are more okay with doing retro games, and I would say, again, they're also cheap. I would say Chapter 1 and then The Awakened because they're the most modern, made for nowadays consoles, updated versions, and those are both of the ones that are the open world, quote unquote, variety of the games. I think that those would be the ones for me personally, who likes things that feel more modern. I would say get Chapter 1 and get The Awakened, and those are the ones that I would start with. Obviously, because Chapter 1 also is the beginning of Sherlock Holmes being Sherlock Holmes. Perfect starting point.
I felt really good and captivated with Crimes and Punishment, as I said, and the pacing's pretty nice and quick, and there's some variety. But if you like the overarching stories and you love your spooky shit, then you're probably better with The Awakened.
Yeah,
Did I
and
say? Yeah, Crimes and
yeah,
Punishment is
Crimes of
my.
Punishment and Chapter One both are the multiple case storyline as well. Just so in case you're like, I just want to do cases as Sherlock Holmes, those two would probably be if you're looking for that particular. If you just want a cool story, yeah, you can do Awaken and start from right from there. No problem.
Yeah, you might do Crimes and Punishment if you just love the classic depiction of Sherlock Holmes' character.
Yeah, that as well. Just like the way you're dressed up. At the end of the season, the average vote gets the averaging tier rankings between the host, guest, and the audience will determine the game's final standing on the list. Currently, it would be C tier, but based on the audience, it could move up, it could move down. Maybe it'll be a high C, maybe it'll be a low C. We'll figure it out at the end. And then, yeah, in a few months' time, we will see where Sherlock Holmes The Awakened ranked against the other games on season 2 of the tier list. Thank you, Brian, for joining me. This has been a ton of fun. Thank you for humoring me and playing these Sherlock Holmes games that I am somehow obsessed with. Give us your last plugs and all that good stuff.
No regrets, man. I'm glad you introduced these to me, or I would never have had them on my radar. They have been a blast. And even though we're done with the show, I'm gonna go back and play those last two and finish Crimes and Punishment. I might, sandwich them in between other games just so I don't get a burnout, because these games are a little bit samesies, even though they do change some things from game to game to game. But like I say, it's a nice casual break between your shoot 'ems and your puzzles and your whatever else. Like, you can find me at timetodierpg.com if you love actual play content like Dungeons and Dragons, or hey, Call of Cthulhu. If you're into spooky shit, you might tune into our story about the Devil's Antlers, where we play a Cthulhu-esque rules-based system and investigate spooky shit in the kind of. I think it took place. I don't remember
It's
if it was
always
specifically
Wisconsin.
in.
It's always
Yeah,
Wisconsin, dude.
I was gonna say Milwaukee, but I'm like, no, it wasn't Milwaukee specifically, but it was Wisconsin in the snow. Weird, unexplained, murderous shit starts happening, and the investigators gotta piece the clues together, kind of like what we talked about today. That was the Devil's Antlers. You can find it all at timetodierpg.com.
Thank you very much. Great stuff. I will say I've been listening to that forever. Listening to all those different iterations of that show, and they've all been very good. Last reminder: Patreon.com/the tier list. Go vote for free. Go follow, support, all that good stuff, and make sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube or podcast services, and leave a fun review. Why not? We're having a good time. Enjoy it. As far as for me, Adam Sherlock Holmes and Brian Lestrade, Inspector. Time to sign off. Have a good one, y'all.